Hi everybody, welcome back. Today is the second video in my series, Coping with COVID-19. Today's lesson is going to be all about the fight, flight, freeze response. So, what I'm going to do is I'm going to walk you through the Polyvagal Theory, which has to do with the fight, flight, freeze response, and then we're going to spend our time expanding the exercise that I explained to you last time, the dropping anchor. We're going to spend a little bit more time on that and expand that and experience that, and then we'll wrap up like we did last time with our compassion exercise. So here we go. So the polyvagal theory is actually a really complicated theory, so I'm not going to go into too much detail because I'm not a doctor, and it was developed by a doctor, Dr. Stephen Porges, and Deb Dana, the author, you'll see her name down at the bottom, she developed a program for therapists to help kind of translate into lay terms so that we could start teaching our clients about the polyvagal theory so that they would understand what's actually happening in their bodies. And it's really important to understand what's happening in your body when you're kind of in crisis or when you're having anxiety or stress, because by knowing this, you're able to kind of give a little distance from it and also make sense to what's happening. So if you're experiencing, for example, panic or anxiety, being able to give it a name and to understand what your body's actually going through is a really powerful way to kind of diffuse and step away, give some space around it for you. Okay, so Dr. Porges, he coined a term called neuroception, and this is because the polyvagal theory comes out of the vagus nerve, which has to do with the sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system. And this occurs below the level of our awareness. It doesn't require thinking, and you can feel it strongly in your body. So for example, I actually literally, as I'm speaking to you right now, I just felt it myself. I felt the adrenaline rush of nerves. I felt a little bit of difficulty swallowing. My breathing was changed. So this is something that we actually can feel physically in the body. And I'll give you an example that I often tell my clients. You'll notice on the right of your screen of the slide that there's a car there driving down the street. And if you imagine that you were driving in that car and going along and it's a sunny day and everything is fine, and then all of a sudden a child were to run across right in front of you, what would happen is before you even had time to think, you'd already be slamming on the brakes. So that is your vagus nerve in your fight or flight response, giving you a jolt of adrenaline to get you to take action. And so you don't need to think about that. It just happens. So it's a very automatic thing. And we actually can't really control it, right? So if I tell you, okay, you're going to drive in the car and whatever you do, no matter what happens, don't slam on the brakes. It would be pretty near impossible if a child ran out in front of you. You would just do it. So similar to when you think about putting your hand on a hot stove, before you even have time to think, whoop, you've already pulled your hand away. So that is your nervous system making sure that you're safe, right? So this is always in service of safety. And so we talk about physical threat. We talked about that in the last video, but this also has to do with emotional threat. So it also is alert to facial expressions, body posture, and those types of things. So that, again, so that we are in tune with whether or not we're safe. So it's always erring on the side of safety. And it also has to do with how we've evolved. There's an evolutionary hierarchy. So what Deb Dana did is she helped therapists make sense of this by putting it on a ladder. So she uses what she calls the Autonomic Ladder to help us explain what's happening. So I'm going to walk us through that right now. So you notice this little guy at the bottom, and he is down at the bottom of the ladder, and he's in a numb, collapsed, shut down, frozen state, okay? And so his dorsal vagal system, it's the oldest pathway, is activated when he's down at the bottom of this ladder. And similar to what we call the reptilian brain. So you'll notice that iguana there on the left side, you'll notice that that's our kind of primitive brain, and it responds to cue of danger by freezing. So if you imagine a lizard or a gecko or an iguana walking down a path and something comes in its way, the first thing it'll do is it'll go, oh, and it'll freeze. And this kind of action is, again, in the interest of survival. It's trying to keep the animal safe. So it freezes with the hope that maybe you'll pass on by, right? So its defense mechanism is to play dead. And so what happens when this happens to us is It disrupts our connection, our ability to connect with people. It disrupts our response to certain things. We feel quite collapsed, shut down. We may feel a bit dissociated, like we're not there. We might have trouble thinking, processing. So it's really kind of a slow shutdown. So that's what's happening. And then if we go further up the ladder, we get into the classic fight or flight. This is a mobilized, agitated frame of mind and very kind of frantic and anxious. So whenever you're feeling a bit anxious and worked up, even angry, right, you're in that fight or flight kind of mode. And this is the sympathetic branch. And you'll notice that I put a very kind of shocking color on there. And that's because this is very unsettling. Typically, when you're in this mode, you feel quite shocked and unsettled, right? So that represents what's happening in the body. And you're more agitated, you're more likely to get really kind of irritable when you're in this mode. And this is a more evolved pathway, so it's preparing us for action. You'll notice the deer being chased by the lion. So if the lion were to grab that deer, you might see that the deer responds by being kind of shut down at first. So it might be in that kind of freeze mode at first. It would play dead, it would have very little muscle tone, and it would look like it's dead until the moment that the lion drops it and lets it go. And in that moment, it gets a shot of adrenaline and it flees, it bolts, right? So it releases this adrenaline in the response to danger. And that's why anxiety can feel so overpowering and so uncomfortable, because that adrenaline is really getting you worked up. It's getting you ready to fight or to flee. So you'll notice a rapid heart rate. You'll notice that your breathing changes. I notice right now that you might notice me as well, taking deep breaths, trying to get more air in because I'm feeling a bit tense. I have anxiety, tension, anger, irritability. So that's what happens when we're in the middle. We're in that sympathetic branch of the nervous system. Now, we'll notice that when we're at the top of the ladder, this is where we feel safe and connected and social and kind of energized and engaged with what we're doing. So when we're at the top of the ladder, we feel like everything's right in the world. So this is kind of the newest pathway, the most evolved. It engages our social engagement system. So this is where, when I'm working with couples, we always work to help them up the ladder so that when they're having these conversations, they're able to engage with their partner in a way where their partner can hear them. So when you're in that state, that's when you can kind of really connect with other people. It's unique to mammals. When we're in that state, we have a regulated heart rate and blood pressure and breathing. We have a sense of well-being. We feel safe and connected and extremely social. We're looking to connect. So this is important to remember that throughout the day, you can go up and down this ladder depending on what's happening. So you may wake up in the morning and everything feels really great and you're going about your day, and then you get an angry email or an angry response from somebody, and immediately you notice that you're being pulled down the ladder. So depending on what's happening to you during the day, you will go up and down the ladder. And some people will notice that depending on their life histories or some of the things that they're experiencing, they can be lower or easier triggered to be down the ladder than others, because this also is very much linked to trauma and trauma response. So for example, people that have PTSD, they often are on the lower. Their general state is kind of lower on the ladder. And so part of their therapy is to help them recognize and to learn strategies to help come up the ladder and to be able to kind of shift that kind of response in a productive way. So we acknowledge what's happening, but then we work towards kind of coping around that. So that's what we're going to be working towards together. And what's important is that you kind of pay attention, because right now, many of us and many of the people that I've been talking to in the last couple of weeks are noticing where they are. They're saying, I'm just agitated. I have no patience. I feel just on edge all the time. I'm having trouble sleeping, right? So that tells us that we're experiencing something profound and our nervous systems are responding to that. So what I'd like to ask you to do is to start to notice and name for yourself, and maybe even write down what's happening when you notice that you're kind of down the ladder a little bit. Just take note, and you can do this by noticing the sensations in the body, and also by noticing your thoughts and noticing your feelings and even your urges or your behavior, right? So if you're having a lot of difficult thoughts and feelings and sensations, you're likely to do certain things, right? So you're likely to flee or maybe lash out, right? There's certain urges and behaviors that go with that. And that's also really normal, but it's helpful to understand, hey, what's happening? What's happening? Okay, so what I'd like to do is switch gears now and go back to the dropping anchor exercise that we did in the last video, and we're going to expand on this. And I forgot to mention that this dropping anchor is a method that is used by Russ Harris, and he's going to be someone that you guys are going to hear a lot about. You're going to get a lot of his free materials. He's really generous in what he offers to people. He's written lots of books, and he's kind of a pioneer in acceptance and commitment therapy. So ACT is kind of his thing, and his name is going to be thrown around a lot. So I want to bring to mind this acronym. This comes from his ebook that he just wrote, and I'm going to put that in the link below for all of you. It's called Face COVID, and part of his acronym is ACE, and we're going to expand this dropping anchor to include ACE, and this is something that you can do throughout the day. It can be a very short, brief kind of check-in moment, or you can do an expanded version of it, which we're going to do in a few moments. But I'm going to walk you through what ACE is. So the first step to ACE is to acknowledge. So you want to acknowledge your thoughts, acknowledge your feelings, noticing if you're afraid, if you're anxious, if you're feeling worried or sad or grieving or disappointed. So just notice that and acknowledge that. The next step, what we want to do is we want to, whoops, I'm about to lose you here. We want to come back to the body. There it is. I was having some trouble there. We want to come back to the body. So first we acknowledge what's happening in the body, and then we want to come back and we want to do that grounding. So pushing our feet to the ground, noticing our bottom in the chair, being able to touch the things that are around us. So really kind of come back to the body. And then the E is for engage. We want to engage with what we're doing. So in this case, we want to engage with maybe our work or our family or the things that we need to be doing in the day. But for the dropping anchor, we want to engage with the 5 senses. So if you remember, we went through the 5 senses. So the first step we're going to do, we're going to acknowledge, then we're going to come back to our bodies, and then we're going to engage with what we're doing. So that's the purpose. So I'd like to invite you in and take a moment, and you'll notice that I took a deep breath in there, so I have some energy. And close your eyes and kind of tune in as we did last time. And see if you can sit in an upright position, and if you're lying down, that's also fine, but just noticing your body pressing into either the bed or the chair. And if you're sitting, pushing your feet in the ground. Kind of just feeling and anchoring your feet. And then noticing the thoughts that come up. Noticing if there are a lot of thoughts, if the thoughts are rapid, if there are spaces between the thoughts. And then notice your body. Notice any sensations in the body. I notice right away that as I drop into this, that my body is kind of slowing down a little bit. I'm coming back up the ladder. I can feel the shift of my breathing. I'm able to take deeper breaths. So just noticing how you're breathing without needing to change it at all. Just noticing the feelings. And then coming into the body deeper. So expand the breath. And expand it to the body, and we'll scan through the body from the top of your head, scanning through, and you can notice any thoughts and feelings as we scan through the body, just noticing, kind of making contact with each area as you scan from the top all the way down through to the bottom, right to the toes. And you might pause at the toes and just kind of notice if there are any sensations. Just noticing the body. And then when you're ready, you can open your eyes and you can orient yourself to the room that you're sitting in. You can notice me and notice the slide and just kind of start to look around the room and see if you can name 5 things that you can see. So notice things that you can see in your surrounding area, and then tune into one thing specifically and just turn your awareness, zooming in and focusing on that one thing. So I notice, for example, I'm looking at a chair in front of me and I'm really looking at it. I'm noticing the color, the shape, the size, the texture. I'm really noticing all the features of this chair. So notice all the things. And then when you're ready, turning to focus on what you can hear, the sounds around the room and maybe outside of the room. And see if you can name for yourself 4 things that you can hear, 4 different sounds. And if you can only hear 1 or 2, that's also fine. And then focusing on one particular sound and seeing if you can really tune in and notice. Noticing the pitch, the volume, the frequency. And if you become distracted by thoughts or feelings, just coming back to listening, really focusing. And then moving on to 3 things that you can feel right now, really tuning in to what you're feeling, maybe where your hands are placed, where your body is right now. Noticing 3 things that you're in contact with that you can feel. I'm tuning in to my hand, which is holding my phone, so I can feel the pressure of it, the weight. Just tuning in, noticing. And if you become distracted with thoughts or feelings, just coming back to what you can feel. And then shifting your awareness to anything that you can smell. Perhaps you can smell 2 different things, or perhaps you can't smell anything at all. But just noticing, maybe you just notice the breath flowing through your nostrils as you attempt to smell, and really tune into what that's like as you try to take a scent in. And then noticing anything that you can taste, and really tuning into the mouth and noticing if your mouth is dry, or if you can taste, or if you need to swallow, and just tuning in to the mouth. And then once again, expand your awareness to kind of look around the room and notice everything. So you can notice your body and your mouth, and you can notice what you can hear. And you can notice your breathing as you look around the room, and kind of just expand your awareness to include all the things that are happening right now. So you're here and you're looking at the screen and you're looking at the things around the room, and just noticing that, noticing how you can shift your awareness. Noticing what's happening in this moment as you look around. And you may stretch out, just kind of give a stretch your arms, kind of move your body a little bit, and then we'll come back and kind of tune in. Okay. And now I'm going to shift gears to remind you of what we just did. So just kind of to bring it home again. So just noticing that we were paying attention to 5 things we could see, 4 things we could hear, 3 things that we could touch, 2 things that we can smell, and 1 thing that we could taste. And remembering that you can do this throughout the day to kind of practice this exercise. And the more you practice, the better you will be able to do it in the times that you need it, right? So if you're feeling really stressed, you can always remember 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And then you can also remember to acknowledge what's happening, to come back to the body, and to engage with what you're doing. And so now I'd like you to invite you into, join me into this compassion exercise as we did before. And so I'll invite you to close your eyes once again. And I'm going to start with the sound of the bell and finish with the start of the bell. So settle in and just notice what happens. And so settling in once again and noticing the position of the body. And if you notice your thoughts and your feelings and any body sensations, just taking a moment to settle in and notice these things. And today we're going to start this compassion exercise by sending compassion to ourselves. It's been a hard week for everybody. You may be going through a really difficult moment in your life. You may be noticing some difficulties with what's happening in the world, but also what's happening personally in your life. And we each have our own circumstances, our own stories, our own histories, our own traumas. And so it can be really helpful to kind of tune in and provide some compassion, to offer yourself with compassion for what you're going through and what your unique story is right now. So I'm going to say the 3 statements and you can repeat them or just listen to them and notice what happens as you send some compassion to yourself. May I be safe and protected. May I be healthy and strong. May I live with ease and with kindness in this world. And now shift your awareness to someone you love. And you can imagine this person in the mind's eye. Imagine them as if you're looking at them in a photograph, a snapshot. Really looking at them and noticing their facial expression, their body posture, what they're wearing. And we will be sending this person some compassion. May you be safe and protected. May you be healthy and strong. And may you live with ease and with kindness in this world. And now expanding your awareness to all the people in the world right now who need our compassion. And maybe you're thinking about all the people that are helping keeping us safe, people at the grocery store, providing us with food and all the delivery, and all the school teachers trying to provide our children and families with education, and all the healthcare workers out there that are facing this crisis and they're on the front lines, and we're sending them compassion. And to all the important people like the police and the fire, and all the other important people that I'm probably forgetting, but we're going to send them all some compassion. May we all may everybody in the world be safe and protected. May all the people of the world be healthy and strong. And may all the people in the world live with kindness and with ease and compassion and care. In a moment, you'll hear the sound of the bell, seeing if you can stay with the sound until you no longer hear it. And then when you're ready, you may open your eyes. Thank you all so much for joining me today, and I hope this was helpful. See you next time. Thanks. Bye.